Hey everybody, before we get started, I just want to remind you this episode is brought to you by our patrons like Ahanga Comics, Qua, Drago66, and Nestor Flores. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You get access to it early and lots of other goodies, and it would really help us out. Thanks for your support, everybody. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk FGO Wanted, the show where we tell you if you want to roll 5 stars. Actually, that's a lie. We can't really tell you if you want to do something. We can only inform you, and then you decide if you want to do it or not. But anyway, we're here, and we want you to roll 5 stars. That seems like a fair assessment, right? We always want people to roll 5 stars. Anyway, if you're not familiar with this show, because it has been a little bit since we did one of these new, basically, what we do here is we talk in 4 segments about a upcoming 5-star servant, usually a limited one, but not always. And basically, we will cover their real-life history and story, whether they are a mythological or a factual historical person. We will talk about their lore with a capital L in Fate, if it exists, and what's up with them, and possibly what their involvement in FGO is. Then we will break down into the mechanics and talk about what they are actually good for as a servant. Maybe they fill a niche you want, even if you don't care about that other stuff, or that other stuff doesn't even exist yet. And lastly, we will talk about their rarity. Not their star rarity, but actually how frequent/infrequent their rate-ups are. And so today, in case you couldn't tell from the thumbnail and the graphic and the Screaming Cowboy, we're going to talk about Ishtar. Before we go into the actual meat of the show, I will say, kind of sorry, we didn't do some more stuff with like the Thanksgiving thing, but that was a lot of like 5 stars in a very compact period, and it was a busy time on the holidays, so we didn't really have a good opportunity to shoot those videos. I will definitely at some point probably do a Gil video and a Shiki when she comes back in like 2 years. Year and a half at this point, something like that. And if you wanted any of those other people who want to rate up, we already have those wanted videos, so check out the wanted playlist. Alright, so, the intro's out of the way. I'm gonna clear my throat. Let's talk about Ishtar. So, Ishtar, aka Inanna, or many other names, is a Mesopotamian goddess who was worshipped by a lot of people. Many peoples of the Mesopotamian area worshipped a goddess, Ishtar, or her equivalent. Inanna is actually the older name. She is based in the city of Uruk. That was the primary aspect of her cult. And Ishtar is associated with portfolios such as love, beauty, sex, fertility, war, justice, and political power. She is referred to as the Queen of Heaven, and is a very big deal goddess in the Mesopotamian cosmology. It's important to note that because of her associations with war and conquest, Ishtar was actually known for taking on new portfolios. She would actually fight other forces or insist that she be given new powers and kind of grow as this sort of major aspect of her character to like grow and learn new things and to beat up people and take over their stuff. In fact, some cultures even referred to the act of battle as the dance of Inanna. Ishtar has a couple of major legends you may know her for. A big one is that she is known for stealing the maize, the sacred aspects of human civilization, basically the divine instructions for how to do certain things like make bread or build buildings. She stole all those from the god Enki and took them to her home city Uruk, so she is credited as basically giving them the gift of civilization, a big one. There are a lot of cases where she enacted aspects of divine retribution against people or even objects who did not obey her whims, such as when she famously demolished a mountain because it dared be as tall and as beautiful as she. That's actually what Ishtar's Noble Phantasm is based on. There's, of course, the very famous myths and a couple of versions of her descent into the underworld, where she goes into the realm of her elder sister, Ereshkigal, goddess of the underworld. We'll do that wanted someday. Don't you worry. Don't you worry, lads. And there's, a very famous scene where she travels through the gates of the underworld and has to strip away her clothing, which is also her maize in some versions of the myth, basically ditching her divine powers, arrives at Ereshkigal's court naked. And then, depending on the version from the culture, one of the two sisters gets mad because Ishtar's in Ereshkigal's house, she dies. And usually this is bad for some reasons. This actually ancient Sumerian version is the most detailed. But at some points, either this is just because Ishtar is like, hey, you gotta get me out of here, like beforehand, or even aspects of like, Ishtar's presence in the underworld is causing Ereshkigal discomfort, and basically they get Ishtar out and she leaves. And in some versions, she comes across her consort Diarmuzid, the shepherd, and the demons drag him back to the underworld to replace Ishtar. But don't feel too bad for him, because the whole point of this, lengthy Sumerian narrative is that Ishtar and the demons come across several people they could have taken back first. But Ishtar's like, no, all of these people are rightfully sad that I was dead. Diarmid is just, sitting relaxed in nice clothes. Sometimes he's sitting on Ishtar's throne and just chilling, which is why she's very upset with him that he's not properly mourning her death, and that's why he gets dragged off to the underworld, but it's okay, she feels bad later in another myth. So that's a major one. There's no real consensus, I think, on what this myth means. A lot of people think it's kind of like a mythological journey to the self, confronting your dark aspects, or it seems kind of like a coming together of two opposites, right? Talking about the balance of the world. Both sisters kind of take on each other's aspects when they're hanging out together, and then they have to separate because that's not the nature of the world, but they learn some stuff about themselves. It's a very complex myth. And then, of course, this will kind of dovetail, one of my favorite phrases, into talking about Ishtar's presence in Fate, but also she's known for appearing in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was much later. And there's a couple of major aspects. First, Ishtar appears trying to ask Gilgamesh to become her consort, and he refuses, and of course this upsets her. He famously lists off how a lot of her loves do end up injured. Some people have taken that literally, but I'm looking at some of the quotes, and it's like, oh, you loved a tiny songbird until you broke its wing. I think this is just reflecting kind of her, childish, sort of whole kind of love, obsessive desire, right? Because Ishtar is not associated with marriage or as a mother goddess or anything. There are even some claims that Ishtar's mythology influenced later goddesses like Aphrodite. And so, anyway, she gets upset with Gil, causes the bull of heaven to come down and rage, but then they kill it, and Enkidu throws the bull's thigh at Ishtar, and this upsets her a lot, as it should. It was not a smart move. Not a smart move, Enkidu. And this causes Enkidu to be cursed. But then later in the epic, Unaptishim, there's a lot of consonants in there. I probably did not say that well. But he relates to how when he was the last man left alive after the god Enlil wiped everybody out in a great flood, Ishtar cried for the loss of humanity and was like, we totally want to let him do that again. So, it's kind of an interesting knock back and forth, right? I feel like in the original epic, it's kind of just like their two egos butt together, her and Gilgamesh. It's not like Gilgamesh is all fun and games. Remember, he starts this epic by banging everybody's wives before they get married, because Gil's not a great guy. Anyway, that's kind of like her general major mythologies. Obviously, Ishtar is associated with Ereshkigal sometimes as her sister. And then usually she might be sisters. She has a brother, the sun god, and also sometimes in other mythologies, storm god. So she's obviously very important, right? She's a huge deal in the mythology, especially in the city of Uruk, and responsible for a lot of major positive aspects of their culture, which is probably why, in Fate, Ishtar's lawful good. So let's talk about it. Obviously, in the background, Ishtar's kind of mentioned as a character who exists in the Epic of Gilgamesh because, that's a thing, but Gil's Gil, so, we gotta take him with a grain of salt. She also will be appearing as a major character in the upcoming Babylonia story chapter, which is not out in North America yet, and also featured in the second summer event where you will get a free version of her. That's cool. Also, she probably will come up in some other aspects. I assume she's going to be at least appearing briefly in one night of the story of the upcoming Christmas event, but I'm not sure. It doesn't really seem like she's a big deal in the Christmas event, just that's when you first get to roll for her. The important thing to note about Ishtar is she appears in FGO, because you can't summon straight-up divine spirits unless they're super weak. That Ishtar is technically a pseudo-servant. She is bonded with the physical body of at least one Rintosaka, which is also why I really want Ishtar. Because she's also Rin. Hey, it's great. Actually, it's kind of interesting the way it's described with the fusion at different points in interludes and background material. It's kind of like a 50-50 split, but basically the Ishtar who is summonable is not really the original Ishtar, not really the original Rin anymore. She's much more heavily influenced consciously by Ishtar, but Rin's subconscious kind of mutes a lot of Ishtar's much more violent aspects, where previously, Ishtar would destroy you and everyone you love. when she's fused with Rin, it's mostly just like, I will yell at you and possibly hit you a little. So that's always interesting, and kind of to see their interplay there. Other than that, there's not really a lot going on with Ishtar. There's, like I said, there's some background mention of her and some stuff where Gil's tossed around, but we don't really worry about that too much. Just suffice it to say that she will be a big deal in the story later, at points. Alright, let's move into mechanics, because here's another great aspect. So, you'll notice that attack exists, and boy howdy, that seems pretty high, doesn't it? Well, let's go ahead and double check the numbers. Who's got that max attack? Oh, look at that. Ishtar is number 3 in max attacks for archers, and the differences are very small. She's like 30 points of attack lower than Gil, and like 100 points of attack lower than Arjuna. And she has a decent amount more HP than them. Something in the order of like 700 to 900. Alright, so yeah. She's very good stat-wise for an archer. Pretty typical star absorption, standard star generation. Her NP does seem a little low per attack, though there's something we'll talk about in a second which improves that, but do look at those hit counts. That's 4 hit counts on those art cards, 4 hit counts on that one quick card, 7 hits on that extra attack. You do some brave chains in there, you'll get your NP. It'll be fine. And then you see all of her normal stuff. She's got a great linear growth curve. That means her stats go up steadily every time. There's no, like, dud levels. And yes, as we mentioned, she's got QAABB. Her busters are only 1 hit, which is a little sad, but I think it works out with some of her kit. So her noble phantasm is Angal Tal Kigal She, which is the mountain myth made real. She shoots the concept of the planet Venus and blows up mountains. It's a pretty standard AoE buster, deals damage to all enemies on the standard curve, increases your own buster performance for 1 turn first, starting at 20%, and is just a pretty general smackdown. With her very high attack, you're going to blast some waves with this, but otherwise it's not super impressive on its own. What makes Ishtar impressive is, let's look at those skills. So first off, skill number 1, Manifestation of Beauty B, a pretty standard charisma variant. Every 5 turns, for 3 turns, you can give 20% attack up and 20% crit damage up to everybody. Like I said, for 3 turns. That's pretty nifty, especially with the low cooldown, and she is, after all, an archer. Second off, Gleaming Brilliant Crown A. Hey, remember how we talked about how that NP charge isn't a problem? At its maximum, this gives you a 50% NP battery every 6 turns. And, hey, that means you can Howling Princess or Golden Sumo right into an NP. Great to clear out a pesky wave. Raid bosses, that's a good tactic where you just want to blow up the wave, or you want to blow up the 2 escorts with the boss with an AoE, bomber. It also has an 80% chance to apply Invincible and Ignore Invincible to yourself for 1 turn. Pair it with Ozzy to make that 100%, otherwise 80% is pretty decent. I wouldn't use it if you have to pierce Invincible, or if you have to become Invincible this turn, but if you're gonna, NP battery and you're like, gosh, it would be really useful if we did actually do that now, without buffs, that's a great, proc. And then I think we get into what is her most potent skill, but probably her finickiest. Mana Burst Gems has a minimum cooldown of 3 turns, and its effect is after 1 turn, increase your attack for 1 turn, with a maximum of 50% attack increase. Yeah, you heard me right. Now, obviously, this is delayed. You pop it 1 turn, and then the turn after that, it kicks in and you get your attack bonus. You're going to have to think about this. You're going to have to look at your cards and go, okay, I don't see any of Ishtar's Buster cards right now. I know I'm going to pop an NP next turn, like I can battery to it. So what you're going to want to do is probably set up with, like, either her or with some allies and be like, all right, let's generate some crit stars. Let's spread out the hurt, and then, boom, you get your cards next turn. Drop them. You're ready to blow. In the future, this will pair very well with Summer BB because she has a unique skill to lock the card deck for 3 turns. So in this case, you wait until you've got, an Ishtar with 2 busters in there, and you're like, okay, I'm going to just freeze these cards, pop Mana Burst, and go for it. And basically, with that 50% buff, her 20% buff, her ability to improve her own buster performance, her NP will still hit hard no matter what if you time it right? Like, if you can just sit for a turn and drop her NP, that's great. That's a lot of attack increases. 70% attack increase, 20% buster increase. Those are multiplicative, by the way, the different buffs. And she's got the 2 buster cards for a Buster Brave Chain. You're going to do some hurt, whether it's on waves or singles. And if you can get your timing down, you'll notice in her passive skills, she has the Independent Action A, which is a 10% always critical strength buff, And then she's got a 20% on her Manifestation of Beauty. You will do some nasty crits, especially with Merlin coming out in probably less than a month-ish. The Buster crit methodology will mesh really well into that. Even if you're not rolling for Merlin, you're going to see a lot of them showing up on your support setups. Ishtar is great for that. Speaking of her passive skills, she also has Magic Resistance A on her own for 20% debuff resist. Oh yeah, and Core of the Goddess B, which increases her damage dealt by 225, and also a 22% debuff increase. She's very hard to debuff, which is good for your damage dealers. All in all, the whole package deal is that Ishtar is a Buster crit archer. She has the core stats to back this up. Her NP charge could be a little bit better, but she has a great battery skill to capitalize on it, which lets you pull off some great strats. All around, she is a well-designed servant who will not steer you wrong if you need a big hitter archer. Also, it's Rin, so there's that. Even if you already got 2 Teslas on tickets, you can always go for that Ishtar. So, let's talk about Ishtar's actual rarity, as in how often does she come up on campaigns. So obviously, the Christmas campaign is coming up. And then she, in Japan, returned for the New Year's. I expect she will also this time, because that seems kind of unfair not to. So that if you miss her now, you got another shot later. Another thing to take note is that she will return again in the 9 million downloads campaign, which I don't know what milestone that'll be for us here in North America, but that was in about May of next year for us. And then, of course, Little Santa Altar will be rerun next year. After that, though, Ishtar has not yet resurfaced on a standard raid-up banner. That's not to say she won't. In a couple of years, like a year and a half from now, in the calendar year, 2 years from now, the Summer 1 servants will return on banners that aren't even related to that. They're related to, like, millions of downloads and stuff campaigns, other milestones. So there's nothing to fear that she won't return in some form after that. It's just that, if you want guaranteed chances, you should be taking your swings now. And that is Wanted Ishtar, everybody. I hope you had a good time. Hope you learned some things. Obviously, we will see Ishtar's character more coming up. This is kind of an interesting case where she hasn't yet been in the story. And that's actually the whole point of her summoning at Christmas, and then you meet her in Babylonia, right? Like, it's like, it's kind of weird. So they turn it into a whole thing. But, yes, she's very potent at what she does in a certain niche. And obviously, if you're overloaded with servants who already do that niche, it's not a big deal. But she's great. She's Rin, voiced by the lovely Ueda Kana. And we'll see how people do. So, this has been Wanted. Keep your eyes peeled for future Wanted banners. Maybe we'll do some of the Babylonia ones. I don't know. That's going to be... Depending on when they announce those, they might be tight together. One of them's permanent, so I don't know. That's sometimes against our ethos. If I'm not busy, I'll do an Enkidu. Otherwise, maybe I'll wait for like a special raid up. I should probably do Ketz, just because she is story locked. But also, I gotta worry about... I have to do a Wanted Merlin. Are you crazy? And then a Wanted Musashi? That's just for me. So we'll see what the schedule is like. I'm warning you now, the schedule in December for raid-ups for new 5 stars will be packed. So watch your courts, everybody. Hold on to your wallets. Spend responsibly. And I will see you in the next video. If you like this video, don't forget to get a like. If you have any comments, leave those in the comments section down below. And of course, if you're new here and have not already, please subscribe. And don't forget to hit that bell for notifications so you always know when we post a video. And of course, as it says at the front of the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early, like this one. You can get audio downloads for our shows, like Let's Talk FGO, right away. And other goodies. And it would really help us out. And feed my courts habit. Ba-dum-ba. Anyway, like I said, I will see you next time. Keep an eye out for Let's Talk FGO. That is literally being worked on as I record this. So it should be soonish after this goes public, if it's not already ready to go. Alright, see you guys next time.